Now, I'm not saying, for those of you who are married, that means you never ever engage in a conversation with somebody of the opposite sex. But what I am saying, and more importantly, what God's word is saying, you better be very careful. You better be very careful about speaking to someone of the opposite sex who is not your mate. Because what can begin as an innocent, superficial conversation can suddenly turn into an intimate conversation that meets some deep emotional need that you or that other person has, forming an emotional bond that eventually expresses itself sexually. And that's why we need to be very careful about friendships with those people of the opposite sex who are not our mate. How do you know? How can you know if a friendship you have with somebody of the opposite sex is wrong, is dangerous? Dr. Dennis Rainey has given 8 warning signs of a friendship that can quickly turn into something else. Number 1, you've got a need you feel your mate isn't meeting, for attention, approval, affection, and that this other person begins meeting that need. Number 2, you find it easier to unwind with someone other than your mate by dissecting the day's difficulties over lunch, coffee, or during a ride home. Number 3, you begin to talk about problems you're having with your mate. Number 4, you rationalize the relationship by saying that truly it must be God's will to talk so openly and honestly with a fellow Christian. Number 5, you become defensive about the relationship and protective of it. Number 6, you look forward to being with this person more than with your own mate. Number 7, you wonder what you would do if you didn't have this friend to talk to. Number 8, you hide the relationship from your mate. Those are all warning signs that this friendship you think is so innocent is about to turn into something explosive. You know, I have found in my experience as a pastor that when it comes to this idea of having relationships with people other than your mate, there are 2 groups of people basically. There's one group of people who get as close to the line as possible without crossing over it. They're always engaged in flirtatious behavior with members of the opposite sex. They engage in conversation laced with double entendre and semi-filthy conversation. They're touching the other person inappropriately. They see how close they can get to the edge without crossing over it. The other people, the other group, are those people who run as far as they can from that line. They're always on guard. Solomon calls that latter group wise. He has another name for that first group. He calls them victims.